الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So let's start with some crucial understandings, right? Let's start with quotations from Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala on aql and intellect and using intellect for proving God's existence, right? So regarding this, okay, regarding God's existence, how do we know God exists? What is God? And how can we prove God? This is something Sheikh has something to say about this. Okay. Sheikh has something to say about this. The thing that you guys brothers are seeing on the screen, the students that are seeing on the screen, is a page from Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah's Sharh by Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. So here he writes, which is basically page 27, I believe. He writes the evidence, okay, the evidence for Allah's existence are aql, the intellect. So we clearly see that aql is given some value. Aql is not something that is thrown aside. It is given some real value. Okay. Then he further goes on and says, as for the evidence for the intellect, from the intellect, we ask, do all these creatures exist by themselves or by chance? In the further classes, we will be discussing and dissecting these type of arguments. The Shaykh is formulating an argument from rationality, from the intellect to prove God existence. If you guys want, you can pause and you can go through this argument, and we will, inshallah, be going through this argument. This is basically an explanation and the argument in the Quran that were you created from nothing or did you create yourself? Okay, so this is what the Shaykh. This is basically so we can see that Islam does give priority and does give some value to logic. So is logic halal? So being logic halal, we're studying logic. We need to understand is logic halal and what is logic. Okay. So in this first class, we will be discussing what logic is really, and in our third class, we will be discussing what something being halal or being permissible mean. So being is logic halal will basically mean something as will basically mean something as logic being halal would basically mean a proposition, okay, or logic being halal or logic is halal is a proposition. So in logical terms, we are basically saying something like this. Okay? We're basically saying something like this. Propositional knowledge presupposes conceptual knowledge. So what is propositional knowledge? What is conceptual knowledge? Propositional knowledge is knowledge that we propose or we make a statement. So when I say logic is halal, or when I say Zaid is a human, or when I say something like I am sick. So this is a propositional knowledge. Now these propositions that I'm making, it presupposes conceptual knowledge. So conceptual knowledge, when I say I am a human, then let's take a better example. When I say Zaid is a human, then Zaid, I have a concept of Zaid in my mind, and I have a concept of human or being human. So there, I presuppose this conceptual knowledge of Zaid and human before making and formulating the proposition or the statement that Zaid is a human. So all propositional knowledge presupposes conceptual knowledge. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Inshallah. So what even is logic? Okay. What even is logic? Because if you're studying logic, you should know what logic truly is. Logic is the method of proper reasoning. Logic is the method of proper reasoning. This here we're talking about definitions. Definitions are different from proposition. We inshallah will be going more in depth in that in our future classes. So logic is the method of proper reasoning. Now, even in this statement, okay, even in this definition, we have some conceptual knowledge such as the concept of reasoning. and the concept of method. Now let's dive into what is the concept of reasoning. Reasoning. Reasoning is the inference of new knowledge from previous knowledge. Reasoning is the inference of new knowledge from previous knowledge. So what does this mean? This basically, for example, would mean something like, I see a fire truck going towards the east, and at the east, I see smoke, dark smoke, black smoke. Then I can conclude that there is a fire. It is reasonable for me to conclude that there is a fire at east. So the previous knowledge that I had was that the fire truck is going towards east and there's a smoke at east. The new knowledge that I inferred from the previous knowledge is that there must be a fire. Okay. So reasoning is this type of inference. Is inference of new knowledge from previous knowledge. Okay. So now we know what reasoning is. So now that we know what reasoning is, we need to understand that the Quran has in many places promoted the use of the mind, reasoning, and pondering. Let's look into that, because it is very important for us as Muslims to understand that we Muslims are not illogical. We are the one who are logical. We are the one who have arguments. We are the one who have proofs for our religion, for our paradigm, for our understanding, for our metaphysics, for our premises, and the list goes on. Okay, so what does the Quran say, and does the Quran itself use logic? Let's look into that then, shall we? Okay. By the way, this is Isa Hoji. This will be the book that I will be using in the course. So I'll explain that in the end of the class, inshallah. So here we are in, this is Juz 3, so chapter 2, Surah Baqarah, verse 258. Okay, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about Ibrahim alayhi salam and the one who was given kingship, or the king. Okay, Ibrahim alayhi salam and the one who was given kingship. So here it says that the one who argued, the one who he argued with, Ibrahim argued with in regard to his Lord. Okay, by the way, you brothers and sisters need to know that arguing about your Lord is something that is very, very, something that you should be very careful about. It's not a small deal. You're arguing about your creator, the creator of the heavens and the earth. This should not be taken lightly. And that is why when you're doing such a thing, you need to have knowledge. And Ibrahim al-Salam, he was knowledgeable. He is known as the one who established Hujjah. Okay, he is known as the one who had decisive evidence. Okay, so they were arguing what is wrong. So who were they arguing with? The one that Allah had given kingship to. Okay, Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said, my Rabb, okay, my Lord is the one who gives life and gives death. The king, he said, okay, the one who was given kingship, he said, I give life and I give death. This was a lie. Does he really give life and does he really give death? It wasn't the case. Why was it not the case? This wasn't the case because what he basically did was he brought out two prisoners, okay, or slaves, I believe, and he told his soldiers to kill one, okay, and then he told to kill the other, and when he was about to be killed, he said, stop. And then he said, see, I gave him death and I gave him life. And then he said that I can give life and I can give death. This argument, his argument was fallacious. Okay, the argument of the one who was given kingship, or the king, was fallacious. It wasn't a valid argument. Okay, it wasn't a valid argument. Okay, Ibrahim alayhi salam could have stopped him and said, wait, you're misrepresenting my position. You could have done that. You would have said, you're misrepresenting my position. But look what Ibrahim alayhi salam does. This is why he is a prophet. He's the one chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not us. Okay, he's a genius. Ibrahim alayhi salam said, indeed, Allah, He brings the sun from the east, and so you come with it or bring it forth from the west. Okay, so Ibrahim alayhi salam ignored his fallacious reasoning, his fallacy, and he gave him an even better argument that even with his fallacious reasoning, he cannot run around it. This is what Ibrahim alayhi salam basically did. Okay, so what was the end result with this? He was dumbfounded. The king, he was dumbfounded. He was shocked. He was shocked. He had no other way to go around it. Okay. So this is how we understand that argumentation is promoted in Islam, as an argumentation giving dalal. And the Quran says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring forth your evidence if you're truthful. Okay, this is one place. Now, what does the Quran say about using logic and reasoning? Okay, now look at this. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Then will you all not understand, or will you all not reason? Let's go all to the translation here. Okay, so this taqil comes from aql. Okay, taqil comes from aql. Okay, does this make sense? Taqil comes from aql. So here in the translation we can see, and to what you worship instead Allah, then will you not reason? Then will you not reason? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the people to reason. Okay, off to you, and to what you worship instead Allah, then will you not reason? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically saying that if you reasoned, you wouldn't be worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And which is true. Which is very true. Is there something that is more true than this? No, it's not. Now let's go to one more place where it is supported. Or do you think, sorry, let me just get the other color. Or do you think that indeed most of them, they hear, they understand, not they are except like little kettles? Okay, let's look at the complete translation. Or do you think that most of them hear or reason? They are not except like livestock, like sheep, like a herd of sheep, brainless, dead. They just follow their ancestors. This is basically the people who do not reason. تعقلون, aql. Do not do that, they become like that. Okay? Something to think about. See? Now that we have seen this, okay, now that we have seen this, let's go to the other side. Aisha, I'll get to your question, okay, inshallah. Okay, so we have seen where the Quran clearly talks about logic and reasoning. Okay, so now let's understand what a method means. A method is a particular procedure in order to accomplish a goal. In this case, a conclusion from premises. Okay, logic is the method of proper reasoning. We already said that. So what does logic basically mean then? So logic basically is the procedure of correct inference from previous knowledge to new knowledge. Okay, correct procedure of incorrect inference from previous knowledge to new knowledge. Okay, keep that in mind. This is basically what logic is. So now we saw what the Quran says, and how we saw what logic is and how it is beneficial and how we use it. Now let's look at one of the arguments. Okay, let's look at one of the arguments. Ibrahim alayhi salam, may peace and blessing be upon him, said, God brings the sun from the east, so you bring it from the west. We already discussed this, right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he basically said this, right? Now let's look at the premises. Okay, we'll discuss what a premise is, what a major premise is, and what a minor premise is. Basically, a premise is a statement made in a argument or proposition made in the argument, and from these different proposition, we reach a true conclusion. Okay, from the premise. Okay, so the premise have statements. Okay, the premise are statements or proposition. Okay, and these proposition, when conjoined, can give us a conclusion. And this is a rule. A rule is very important to understand. In this case, the rule is there has to be a sharing of a middle term. Okay, for example, you, a human, cannot raise the sun from the west. Okay, that is the first premise. Okay, the second premise is anyone who is not able to raise the sun from the west is not God. Hence, the conclusion is you're not God. We will definitely be going in this more in depth in our future classes, so don't be worried, guys. In our 7th, 8th class, we'll be going into definitions, inshallah. We'll be going into essential definition, non-essential definition, so so complete and incomplete definition. So you guys don't need to worry about that at all, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. So, but in this case, you guys understand, right? So what is the rule? A rule is something when it is used, okay, or by the virtue of which we are able to conjoin the major and minor premise to give us a conclusion or to keep the argument valid. There are many rules. There are many rules that we'll study, inshallah. In this case, you, a human, cannot raise the sun from the west. That is the minor premise. Okay, there has to be a sharing of a middle term. The middle term is common between the two premise. So here is cannot raise the sun from the west, cannot not able to raise the sun from the west. Once we conjoin these two premise and remove the middle term, we get if you're not able to raise the sun, if you okay not able to raise the sun, then you are not God. Then hence we remove the middle premise, we get you are not God. Simple. And this is the argument that was presented. Make sense? Inshallah. So let's go to another slide, inshallah. So this was till here. I kept a very small class. This class was actually an hour long, but in the recording, I kept it brief for the people who might have missed it, inshallah. The next class, I'll be recording it properly, don't worry, because there will be less student and it will be more concise, inshallah ta'ala. And this is just an introductory class. You guys don't need to worry about anything at all. So the next class is what is the difference between Islamic logic and Aristotelian logic. Okay, and this is where we will go in depth about what is Aristotelian logic and what is Islamic logic. And then we'll be going about if that is permissible, that will be in the third class. Okay, so for example, let me just show you what Islamic logic, what do I really mean by Islamic logic. So this is the book that we'll be covering, Isoghoji. This is by Abhari. This is by Abhari. Okay, Al-Abhari. So Al-Abhari was basically a logician. He was knowledgeable as well, and he was a Muslim. So this book is from him. Isoghoji basically means as an introduction to introduction. So this is an introduction to logic. So Isoghoji, we will be covering this, and in the next class we'll be understanding what is the common things between Aristotelian logic and Isoghoji, Abhari Isoghoji or Islamic logic, and We will then be discussing in third class, is it permissible? If there are things that are similar, is it permissible? So I'll give you guys a sneak peek about what I mean. For example, here, we'll be discussing a little bit in our next class about pre-Socratic philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, and then Jesus, may peace and blessing be upon it, and the rise in Plotinus and Plotinus philosophy, Neoplatonic philosophy, and then John the Damascus, then the age of confusion, so basically the Mu'tazila and Jahmiya, and Ibn Sina, then these heavy hitters, logicians, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, Al-Ghazali, and how this knowledge went to the West, basically the Renaissance. So Thomas Aquinas, even post Ibn Rushd, we'll be discussing all this in depth. And then Al-Razi, then Al-Abhari, and then from Abhari we have the book Al-Abhari's Isagogi that we'll be studying, right? So we get this, we understand this, perfect. I will be doing a course, proper course. Will be where it will be an introduction to philosophy, where we study thought. The reason for that will be not to study philosophy in that, but rather to know a lot of the ideas that are in Islam that are from philosophy. So we'll be doing that inshallah as well. So you can correct your own belief in Islam, right? Such as, there are ideas from Neoplatonian philosophy, Neoplatonian philosophy that is in extreme Sufism, for example, right? So people who might be taking the class who might not know the origin might believe in such a thing, so they can correct their belief. That will be the goal of the course. That will be the introduction to Islamic philosophy, inshallah ta'ala. So for now, that is the class, and inshallah we will be ending with this, the first class, and the next class we will be holding next Sunday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.